There was a chair at my grandmother's table that nobody ever sat in. It wasn't broken. It wasn't stained. It was just the chair closest to the kitchen, the one where drafts came through in winter, where you had to get up and down if anyone needed more rolls or forgot the gravy. Every Thanksgiving, every Easter, every Christmas morning brunch, that chair was mine. Not because anyone said so, because by the time I was 7, I already knew. I was the one who got up. My name is Iris. I'm 31 years old and I own a Victorian farmhouse on 4 acres in central Pennsylvania. I bought it myself, with money I saved for 6 years while working 60-hour weeks as a project coordinator for a mid-sized construction firm. I have a mortgage I pay on time, a rescue dog named Fig, and a front porch where I drink my coffee every morning and watch the fog lift off the fields. My brother does not live there. My mother does not have a key. That part took a while to get to. Let me back up. My mother had 2 children. My brother, Marcus, came first. Then me, 2 years later, a surprise she never exactly kept secret. Marcus was the kind of kid adults loved immediately. Loud, charming, knew how to walk into a room and make people feel like he'd been waiting specifically to see them. Our mother lit up around him in a way I spent most of my childhood trying to understand and eventually stopped trying to replicate. I wasn't a difficult child. I got good grades. I didn't cause trouble, I just wasn't Marcus. By the time I was in middle school, I understood the shape of our family clearly. Marcus was the story our mother told at dinner parties. I was the part she skipped over. When I won the regional science fair at 13, she forgot to come. She said she'd mixed up the date. I had the flyer on the refrigerator for 3 weeks. It was at the same school where Marcus had his lacrosse games, which she never once missed. I stopped putting flyers on the refrigerator after that. My father left when I was 4. He's not part of this story except to say that his leaving seemed to make my mother hold Marcus tighter and hold me at arm's length, as if she needed to put her love somewhere safe after the loss, and I was, somehow, the riskier investment. I've done enough therapy to know that's probably not conscious. I've also done enough therapy to know it doesn't matter whether it was conscious or not. What it produced was this, a version of me that learned to rely on nobody. I paid for college myself, through scholarships and 2 part-time jobs. My mother co-signed Marcus's student loans, which he has never fully repaid. I graduated in 3.5 years. Marcus took 5 and change, and our mother threw him a party when he finally finished. She sent me a card with a $20 bill inside when I graduated. The card said, "Proud of you," with an exclamation point that felt like a period. I moved to Pennsylvania for work at 24. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. I packed my car over a weekend while my roommates were out of town, signed the lease on a studio apartment in Lancaster, and drove away from the apartment complex in suburban Ohio where I'd been living since graduation. My mother called that Sunday. I said I'd moved. She said, "Oh," and then asked if I knew whether Marcus was coming home for his friend's wedding. I said I didn't know. I didn't talk to her much after that. A text here or there. She called on my birthday, usually within a day or 2 of the actual date, which was close enough that I understood it was a gesture, not a priority. Marcus texted me memes sometimes. I responded with the thumbs up emoji. We were not close. We were family, which is a different thing. For 6 years, I worked and saved and ate out less than I wanted to, and bought secondhand furniture and drove a car with 180,000 miles on it, and told myself that every dollar I didn't spend was a dollar that bought me something nobody could take away from me. The farmhouse came up on a Tuesday in March. I was on my lunch break eating a sandwich at my desk, scrolling through listings without any real intention. I'd been pre-approved for a mortgage the previous fall, but hadn't found anything in my range that felt right. Then I saw it. White clapboard siding, a wraparound porch, a red barn in the back, 4 acres of flat land with a creek running along the eastern edge, built in 1894. Updated kitchen, new roof. It had been on the market for 63 days, and the price had dropped twice. I drove out to see it that Saturday. I stood on the porch and looked out at the fields and felt something I hadn't felt since I was a child. Staring at that refrigerator flyer. I felt like something could be mine. I put in an offer that afternoon. Full asking price, pre-approved financing, 30-day close. The sellers accepted within the hour. I closed on a Wednesday in April. The realtor handed me the keys in the driveway and shook my hand and drove away. And I stood there in the thin spring light with the keys in my fist and Fig running circles in the tall grass, and I cried in a way I hadn't cried in years. Not sad crying. The other kind. I did not post about it on social media. I told 3 people, my coworker Finn, who had become my closest friend in Pennsylvania, my college roommate who'd moved to Portland, and my therapist. I was not hiding exactly. I'd just learned over many years that the things you announce are the things that invite opinion. But Marcus found out 6 weeks later. I still don't know exactly how. My coworker says she never told anyone. My college roommate says the same. My best guess is that something I said in a group text got screenshotted, or that the property record hit some public database and someone searched my name. It doesn't change what happened next. My mother called on a Friday evening in June. I was on the porch with a glass of wine and the dog, watching the last of the daylight leave the fields. When I saw her name on my phone, I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the thing my therapist calls the brace response. I answered anyway. She asked how I was. Fine, I said. She asked about work. Good, I said. Then she said, I heard you bought a house, in a tone that was not congratulatory. I said yes. She said she hoped I hadn't overextended myself. I said I hadn't. Then she said, and I want to be precise here because I replayed this sentence many times, Marcus has been looking at properties in that area too. I thought maybe you two could have looked together. I sat with that for a moment. He could have helped you negotiate, she continued. He's good with that kind of thing. Marcus sells insurance and has rented the same apartment in Columbus for 8 years. I told her I was happy with the purchase and that I'd handled it myself. She said, of course you did. And something in the way she said it, the particular flatness of it, made clear that she did not mean it as a compliment. We hung up. I refilled my wine. Fake put his head in my lap. I thought that was the end of it. In late August, Marcus texted asking if he could come see the place. He said he was thinking about making a road trip through Pennsylvania and wanted to catch up. We hadn't been in the same room in 2 years. I thought, maybe. People can surprise you. I said, sure, come for the weekend after Labor Day. He arrived Friday evening, later than he said he would, with a woman I'd never met and 2 of his friends from Columbus. I had planned for 1 person. I had a guest room ready. He acted like this was perfectly normal, like showing up with 4 people to someone's house was a reasonable thing to do. His girlfriend walked through my front room slowly. Not like a guest, but like someone taking inventory. He commented on everything. The land, the barn, the creek walk, the original hardwood floors in the front parlor, the clawfoot tub in the upstairs bathroom. Not in a, wow, this is beautiful way. In a, how much did this run you way? In a, how much did this run you way? In a, have you thought about renting the barn out way? In a, you know you'd make a lot of money if you ever decided to sell way. I had a nice dinner. I smiled. I said the right things. On Sunday morning, I woke up early and walked the property alone and told myself I was being uncharitable. Maybe he was just making conversation. Maybe that was just how he talked. They left Sunday afternoon. His girlfriend hugged me and said the house had so much potential, which I smiled through. Then they were gone and I stood in my own kitchen, and the quiet came back and I felt relief, so complete it almost embarrassed me. I should have known then. In October, my mother asked if she could come for a visit. I hesitated. She pushed a little. I said yes a weekend in November and marked it in my calendar. She arrived on a Friday with a casserole dish wrapped in a dish towel and a lot of opinions about my curtains. She slept in the guest room and we watched television in the evenings, and it was, on the surface, fine, almost normal. Almost like a different version of a family. On Saturday afternoon, she sat at my kitchen table and asked me, very casually, if I'd had the property appraised since I bought it. I said I hadn't needed to. She nodded like she already knew something I didn't. That evening, she mentioned that Marcus had been talking to a property attorney. She said it offhandedly, as though she were mentioning the weather. I asked what kind of property attorney. She said she wasn't really sure, something about estate planning and family assets. I didn't own anything jointly with my family. I had no shared assets with Marcus. My house had nothing to do with any family estate. There was nothing to plan. I let it go. But I didn't forget it. After she left, I called Fen and told her the whole thing. Fen is a paralegal, which is part of why she is my closest friend in Pennsylvania. She listened to everything and then said, quietly, "Pull your deed, make sure your title insurance is current, and call a real estate attorney on Monday." I did all three by Tuesday. My attorney is a woman named Sable who has been practicing property law in Lancaster County for 22 years and who I would describe as the least ruffled person I have ever met. I told her what my mother had said. She asked a few questions. Then she said she'd do a title search and flag anything unusual. 2 weeks later, she called me back. The title was clean. My name, only my name, on the deed. But she said something else. She'd been searching county records for any recent filings under my address, just to be thorough. There was an inquiry. A document request had come in from a law office in Columbus, Ohio, the same city where Marcus lived, asking about ownership verification for my property. I asked what that meant. Sable said it could mean many things. It could be routine. It could be someone exploring a claim. She said, "I'd like you to keep me on retainer for a bit, if that's all right with you." I said that was very much all right. I paid the retainer by the end of the week and gave myself a couple of days to feel scared before I decided to feel something more useful instead. I am my mother's daughter in at least one way. I know how to prepare for things quietly. I installed a video doorbell and 2 exterior cameras covering the driveway and the front entrance. I got a secondary lock on the barn. I told Fen what was happening and she checked in on me every few days. My neighbor 2 properties over, a retired sheriff's deputy named Walt, had always been friendly. I mentioned vaguely that I'd had some family tension over the property and asked if he'd keep an eye out for anyone he didn't recognize. He said he would, without asking for more details than that, which is exactly the kind of neighbor I needed. I also called the Lancaster County non-emergency line and introduced myself to the on-duty officer, explained I was a single woman living alone who had flagged a potential property dispute with family members from Ohio, and asked what I should do if something happened. They took my information. They noted the property address. Then I waited. Nothing happened in November. Nothing in early December. I half wondered if I'd been wrong. If I'd let Fen's instincts and my own anxiety build something out of nothing. Then, on a Saturday morning in mid-December, I was inside making coffee when Fig started barking in the way he doesn't bark at deer or the mailman. I looked at my phone. The camera app had sent me an alert. There was a dark blue pickup truck in my driveway that I did not recognize, parked sideways like it planned to block me in. My mother's car was behind it. I set my coffee down very carefully. I called Sable first. She didn't pick up, it was Saturday, but I left a detailed voicemail. Then I called the non-emergency line and said there were unrecognized vehicles on my property, and I believed a property dispute was being acted upon. The dispatcher asked if I felt safe. I said I did for now. She said she'd send someone to do a welfare check, but response times on weekend mornings could be 15 to 20 minutes. I said I understood. I put Fig in the bedroom. I pulled on my boots and my coat. I went outside. My mother was standing in the driveway in her good coat, the gray wool one she wore to church. Marcus was there, and his girlfriend, and a man I didn't recognize in dark work pants who was carrying a toolbox. There was another man in the pickup truck cab still sitting inside, looking at something on his phone. Marcus smiled when he saw me. He had the particular smile he got when he felt like he was holding a card you didn't know about. "Hey," he said. "We were going to surprise you." I stood on my porch steps. I did not invite anyone further. "With what?" I said. My mother stepped forward. She was holding a manila folder. "I want to sit down and talk about something as a family," she said. "Can we go inside? We can talk here," I said. "What's in the folder?" She opened it. Inside was a document, several pages, official looking. She said it was an agreement she'd had drawn up. She said that our grandmother, her mother, who had died 8 years ago, had wanted the property in our family to stay in the family. She said that because I wasn't married and didn't have children, and because Marcus had been looking at putting down roots, she felt the farmhouse should be shared. I asked her what she meant by shared. Marcus spoke up. He said he'd looked into it. He said that under certain conditions, a parent could assert interest in a child's property if there was documented financial contribution to the purchase. I said our mother had contributed $0 to my purchase. He said that wasn't quite right. I asked him to explain what he thought was quite right. He said that our mother had provided emotional and logistical support during the years I was saving up, and that a family attorney had advised them that this could constitute a contribution in some circumstances. I looked at my mother. She was looking at the folder. The man with the toolbox had taken a few steps toward my front door. I said clearly, "Please don't move closer to my door." He stopped. I looked at the man in the truck who had now gotten out and was also holding something, a clipboard, I realized, not a tool. He said he was a county-certified real estate assessment agent, hired by the law office to do a courtesy inspection of the property. I said no county-certified agent shows up at a private residence on a Saturday morning without an appointment and without a court order. He started to say something. I said, "Please wait by your truck." Then I heard Walt's truck before I saw it, coming down the road. He pulled onto my property slowly and parked near the barn. He got out and stood there with his hands in his pockets, not saying anything, just looking at the assembly in my driveway. I said, "Good morning, Walt." Walt said, "Good morning, Iris. Everything all right?" I said I was working on it. Marcus looked at Walt. Then he looked back at me. Something shifted in his face. "This doesn't have to be a whole thing," Marcus said. "We're family." I said that I noticed he hadn't mentioned that when he had a law office in Columbus request my property ownership records without telling me. My mother's chin came up. She said she didn't know anything about that. I said very quietly, "Mom, I know you know." Then the patrol car turned onto my property. Then a second one behind it. I'd called the non-emergency line, but when the officer came out, he told me a second car had been dispatched because the address had an existing note on file from my call 2 months prior, flagging potential property dispute. "Standard procedure when a note is already in the system," he said. "They take it a bit more seriously." The two officers walked up. One introduced himself to me. One walked over to the man with the clipboard. They asked everyone to identify themselves. My mother said something about this being a private family matter. The officer said that whether or not it was a family matter, he needed to confirm that everyone on the property was authorized to be there. He looked at me. I said that I was the property owner. I said I had not invited anyone currently in my driveway. I said that a man I did not know had attempted to approach my front door with a toolbox. The man with the toolbox said he was a licensed locksmith. The officer asked to see his license. He produced it. The officer looked at it, then looked at him, then asked who had hired him. Marcus said he had. The officer asked if Marcus was the property owner. Marcus said no, but that there was a legal matter pending. The officer asked if there was a court order authorizing entry. Marcus said not yet. The officer said then no one would be entering the property today. My mother stepped forward. She said the document in the folder with a legal agreement that I had an obligation to consider. The officer said that a civil document was a matter for civil court, not for a Saturday morning arrival with a locksmith. He said, in the very calm way officers say things when they want you to hear them clearly, "Ma'am, if you filed a legal claim, you pursue it through the courts. You don't show up at someone's home with a contractor." Marcus said something under his breath. His girlfriend touched his arm. I said, "I'd like everyone to leave my property now." The officer stood there while my mother walked back to her car with the folders still in her hands. Marcus went last. He stopped at the edge of the driveway and looked at me in a way that was supposed to mean something, some last attempt at a dynamic where he was the one with the advantage. I looked back at him until he looked away first. The blue pickup backed out. My mother's car followed. I heard them go down the road and the sound faded and the fields were quiet again except for the wind. Walt walked over. He asked if I was okay. I said I was. He said if they came back, I should call him directly, not just the non-emergency line. He wrote his cell number on a gas receipt from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. I still have that receipt. Inside, Sable had called back. I sat on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet and Fig in my lap and told her everything that had happened. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Good, you handled it right. Now here's what comes next." What came next was a letter from Sable's office to the law firm in Columbus, making clear that my title was clean, that there was no legal basis for any claim, that the appearance at my property with a locksmith on a Saturday morning had been documented by 2 Lancaster County Sheriff's deputies, and that any further action of this nature would result in a complaint for harassment and trespass. 3 weeks later, the law firm in Columbus sent back a letter saying their client had decided not to pursue the matter. My mother called in January. I let it go to voicemail. She said she hoped I understood that she'd been trying to keep the family together. She said she thought I'd want to share things with my brother. She said she hoped we could put this behind us. I thought about that word, share. About who had been asked to share and when and what. I didn't call her back. I called Fen instead, and she came over that Saturday, and we made soup and walked the back fields and watched Fig try to herd the crows. And it was an ordinary afternoon. Just mine. There's something I've been thinking about since all of this happened. When you grow up the way I grew up, always the one getting up from the chair, always the one adjusting, always making yourself easier to overlook, you learn to measure your worth by how little trouble you cause. You mistake invisibility for safety. You think that if you stay small enough, nothing can come for you. But they came for me when I had something worth taking. The smallness didn't protect me. What protected me was the fact that I had stopped being small. Not loudly. Not in a way that looked like anger or bitterness. Just quietly, over years, I had built a life that was entirely mine, and when they came with a folder and a locksmith and whatever story they'd told themselves about family and fairness and what they deserved, I was already standing on the porch. I was already standing on the porch. Fig is asleep on the couch right now. The fields have about 2 inches of snow, the dry, fine kind that the wind pushes around in slow curves. My coffee is hot. My mortgage payment processes automatically on the 1st of the month. My deed has one name on it. I've been thinking about getting a proper security gate for the driveway, something with a keypad. Walt said he knew a guy who did good ironwork at a fair price. I think I'll call him this week. I've thought a lot about what my mother meant when she said she was trying to keep the family together. I think she believed it. I think she had told herself that story for so long, it had become the only version she knew. Marcus needed more, so she gave him more. I needed less. Or at least I never said otherwise, so she gave me less. And over time, the math of it hardened into something that felt, to her, like fairness. That's the thing about patterns that go unchallenged. They don't stay patterns, they become assumptions. And assumptions eventually become plans. What happened in my driveway that December morning wasn't random. It was the end of a very long sequence of choices, theirs and mine. Every year I stayed quiet. Every Christmas I didn't make a scene. Every time I moved forward without asking anyone for permission. I was building something. And every year they looked at what I was building and decided it was available to them. I think some part of them believed they were entitled to it because I had never once told them they weren't. That's on me, partly. Not the guilt of it. I've let that go. But the understanding of it. Silence isn't protection. Staying small doesn't keep you safe. It just makes it easier for people to walk across you without noticing they're doing it. What protected me in the end wasn't luck. It wasn't that I happened to have the right neighbor or the right attorney or the right officer on duty that morning. It was that I had spent years making decisions that compounded. I saved when it was hard. I asked questions instead of assuming. I paid a retainer on a Tuesday afternoon when I wanted to believe nothing was wrong, because Sable's instincts were sound, and I had learned to trust sound instincts over comfortable ones. I called the non-emergency line 2 months before anything happened. I told Walt the truth without telling him everything. I built, quietly, a position that was very difficult to attack, not because I was lucky, but because I had done the work that luck tends to reward. Marcus walked away with nothing. Because there was nothing to take. Not because of any dramatic confrontation. Not because I outwitted him in some single clever moment. Because I had been careful, consistently, before it ever became a crisis. That's the thing about preparation that doesn't look impressive until it suddenly is. I think about Fen telling me to pull my deed the night after my mother left in November. That was the hinge. I could have talked myself out of it. I almost did. But I've learned that the moments when you most want to believe everything is fine are often the moments when you most need to verify that it is. I'm not angry at my mother. I used to think I would be, if it ever came to this. But anger would mean I expected something different from her, and I stopped expecting things from her a long time ago. What I feel is something quieter. A kind of clarity. the clean feeling of understanding a situation fully without illusion and choosing your response from that understanding rather than from hope or fear. Fig is getting older. He's 9 in January. He still herds the crows, still barks at the mail truck, still puts his head in my lap when I've had a long day. The fields are quieter in winter. The mortgage is mine. The deed has my name on it. That's enough. That's more than enough.